This story begins with Prota named Hiraku already dying in the hospital in another dimension when he finds himself in the form of a soul. The deity who cares for his world confirms his death and reveals that he lived until the age of 39, having a very cruel life because he was betrayed by friends and left to die with a terminal illness. For this reason the deity decided to give the chance of a second life, where this time he will receive a healthy body that will not get sick, where even though he still speaks that he neglected Prota's life. So with that, the deity of his world asks if he has any requests for his new life, and laughs with inform that he wants to try farming this time, because while he was in the hospital he liked to watch this kind of, also saying that since he was not sociable in his last life, if he could he revive in a pacific place, far civilization in this next life, in order to have a quiet and peaceful life. But answer this is divinity says agriculture is not part of his jurisdiction, so he makes a quick call. To I don't know who to tell Prota that he will receive his new life with a healthy body, receiving permission from the deity to use the power of the omnipotent farming tool, or sending him away to his new life soon. Then coming with the rope into the forest, happy to be able to move for the first time because of the fact that he has been lying in a bed for so long. And with this he immediately thinks about how to start his new life as a farming from now on, realizing that he is practically alone there in the forest, far away from civilization, getting a little worried that he's so far away from people. So he remembers his powerful agricultural tool, and a magic hoe appears in his hand to start building something, realizing that when he uses it he doesn't get tired, so he can plow the hard soil without problems, verifying that the magic hoe has left the soil nice and fluffy, where he realizes that sure, it would be possible to grow some great vegetables there in this soil, yet he realizes that he has to find food and water first. So he goes out into the forest and listens to the streams nearby. He can only hear the leaves, and there are no edible plants around, where he begins to realize that there may be dangerous animals around him. So they look for a safe place to stay, and ends up coming across a giant tree where they decide to set up a base camp there, because the tree will serve as a good reference point. And with this, since there are no rivers or lagoons nearby, rivers or ponds nearby, he locates a water table in that same area and uses his agricultural skill to create a shovel, because the skill all kinds of tools to use. Then so he raked the ground until he finally hits the water, thinking about then to go out and solve the problem of food, but he doesn't feel hungry. So he wonders if this is the power of omnipotent tool. Also soon choosing to free up more space in the area by cutting down trees to begin building his base camp, where felling a tree on the path that was in the place where he would make so he prepares to cut down the tree where he hopes to use the standard method of several axe strokes. But he is surprised when he cuts it down with a single blow of his omnipotent axe, calling forth the axe again to process the wood. With everything already cut, he thinks about building a hut for shelter. But because of the looseness about to set in, he realizes that he has not yet made a fire. He realizes that he hasn't made a fire yet. So he is forced to dig an improvised hole in the trunk of the tree for shelter, to take shelter, while inside he makes some wooden cups and plates. The next day he uses his cup to drink water from the well he made, by also making the fire using a cloth to keep everything for the day ahead, continuing to clean the area for his. When he finishes, he will start to plow the land, getting amazed by the great resistance of his body. Suddenly a rabbit with a monstrous appearance. Suddenly a monstrous-looking rabbit runs towards him, attack him, and he reflexively hits it with his tool, leading him to death. Instantaneously, moments later, he appears over the fire with skewers of, commenting that this was all a happy accident, but still feeling a bit guilty that things ended this way. Soon afterwards he is shown that he will be building a toilet for his needs, since everything that goes in comes out, according to him. But because the bathroom is all open, Hiraku can't concentrate to do his necessities, so he decides to build a cover around it. So after relieving himself, he finally starts to cultivate the land, thinking of growing potatoes, onions, and other vegetables, so that at the end of the day he finishes preparing the land and realizes that he has neither seeds nor seedlings to plant, and because he has already worked until late, he decides to rest a bit in order to go after them in In the forest the next day while waking up the next day. Next day while waking up the next day. The next day he sees that the plants are already sprouting from the ground, so he runs. Wondering if in this world seeds are not necessary in the plantations. However, this considers the possibility that this could be by the use of the agricultural tool, and with this positive progress, he decides that he will protect his plants from the animals in the forest by building a fence around it to protect the plants, digging a ditch before them for extra protection against rabbits. Being that in a few days with the work already done, he appears eating another rabbit monster that he has captured. In that while he is in the works, he is not sure what kind of plant is growing in his. He just hopes that they are not just decorative plants. With a few more days going by to increase the height of the ceiling, and with that getting into the rhythm of the routine of your new life. Soon after encountering two forest dogs in front of his property where looking at him, he assumes that they will not attack him, so he places a wooden board over his ditch, gesturing for them to come to his house, where they feeds them some of the meat from. He notices that one of the dogs has a swollen belly and is probably pregnant, and realizes that the canine couple was trying to find a safe place to give birth, and that way by that Hiraku always wanted to have a puppy. They take shelter in their cabana, where she waits for them to have the light, whereby preferring to give the puppies a little privacy. To the puppies he sleeps under the tree, worrying about his new guests. So the next morning he gets up to see how they are and is delighted that the birth was a success, and the puppies come out drinking milk while the parents look very tired. So to celebrate the birth he will go with some of the tastiest parts of that boar for them, thinking that the two would leave after giving birth. But they stayed there and have already taken over the hut, so he builds himself a new bigger and better house, and also his plants have grown enough for him to be able to harvest them, while the hunting dogs help him protect questions. So he named the two dogs Yuki. This way now his farm is starting to take shape, leaving him very busy with the harvest, where he will need to build a storage hut to protect his food, as he plans to build a storage hut, furniture and various other things he needs to live on in preparation for all of this. So over time Vacuum has already learned several things about his ability, with one of them being able to grow some crops and implant no seed, needing only to think the crop he wants to grow, while the area and the soil germinate. He also created a small shrine in the tree dedicated to the two deities that made this possible, and so now with more abundant food, he begins to cooking and making a rabbit stew, complaining that all he would ever need now is seasoning for food. So he decides to plant some fruit trees and goes exploring the forest soon after, where with the help of the dogs he can navigate through the forest without getting lost, where to find a spring of water that connects him to his farm via a canal that he dug, where with this water is extra he can create a new field to grow other types of vegetables and plants. But now, after a few days, the place starts to cold because winter is approaching, so Vacuum tries to use the fur of the monster rabbit to keep warm, but because it stinks too much he prefers just to gather wood for the cold, even though he is interrupted by a giant spider in the process, who, showing his skills, creates fabric from its webs and begins to live in the giant tree, creating a beautiful coat to better withstand the cold, where she also makes curtains and bed sheets and many other things that increase her level of civilization, where she decides to call her an adult spider. So that as time winter is in full swing and we see Hiraku in his hut, warming himself with enough food harvested to get through this bad weather. So after some time it begins. Spring arrives, showing that at this point the pups of the dogs are all ready. So they go into the forest to make their homes, where they return with more Hiraku pups breeding, and the adults also show up with spider litter with more mouths to feed, so they are left with no option but to further increase their field of. But in the middle of the work, the adult triggers an alarm saying that something is approaching, so he goes to check in the forest with his pack of dogs, and ends up finding a little girl all messed up, where the dogs keep growling at her. But even so, Hiraku approaches where he ends up being bitten and having his blood sucked by the same, where with this the girl restores her original form soon after thanking her. However, she is attacked by the dogs, transforming her back to her child form with them wanting to attack. And after a brief conversation with her he discovers that she was being chased and ga all her energy, so he feels sorry for her and allows her to suck his blood again. Again, where she comments that his blood is full of vitality. His blood is full of vitality. After interacting with her he no longer sees her as a threat anymore, so he invites her to his farm where he shows her everything to her, leaving the girl amazed. Amazed at what he has accomplished, achieved, and also surprised with his where they end up harvesting some crops. And later that night she goes to whom she introduces as Lu, and we see her entering all the new vegetables into her database, revealing that she is a vampire. And a researcher of medicinal plants, and that for having fought with some nobles that tried to steal her research. Her research ended up in the forest. Asking if she could visit Hiraku again someday when she realizes that someone finally showed up for him. So he begs her to stay there with him forever, and she takes this as a proposal of marriage. Marriage proposal starting to become healed, where it will eventually happen. So she accepts. The next morning they return to work with Lu, asking if they can grow some medicinal plants there as well, and with her or helping later, adding lights in the bathroom using magic, which is quite surprising. Hiraku soon afterwards enjoying a Lu commenting about not having salt in the food, where will say that she doesn't know where he can find salt, so Lu takes him to the well he dug, showing him a layer of salt that when boiled would turn into refined salt, transformed into refined salt, leaving him incredulous for not having noticed this. Where during their conversation they are interrupted by the alarm going off again, making them both run to find a girl named Auntie who was seized and surrounded by the dogs, where she begs them to leave her, apologizing for having attacked first, so she will go with the loose. She heals herself, realizing that the fight hiding in this forest where she tries to leave, that the moon now has a husband soon, later revealing that she appeared there because fight her with a reward for her head for having tumultuated in the city, before telling that the fight in this situation because she was rude to the nobles of the city, where while they are talking she receives an invitation from the vampire for her to live with them there in the cabin, trying to convince the aunt by showing all the surroundings of the farm and the animals that live there, where even receives help from her to make the harvest, and wins her over in one fell swoop when she tastes the strawberry for the first time with hello, saying how much fun she had that day. She should live there with her because her body will not be able to handle everything that will happen in that cabana, so she had decided to live with them, helping with her magic in the day-to-day where they are improving the farm, being soon later revealed that healing ant now are the voice, where the ant is shocked that he himself has taken so many beasts to live with him soon after by the number of beasts. Dogs on the side of your farm watching in a row, the unbuttoned puppies go on with their lives, giving a Proviraku greeting of gratitude but this interrupts everything, saying you're going to leave for a while, flying away. Then where days later she returns with a group of alpha girls, where they introduce themselves and ask the Hiraku to let them live with him and his, explaining that in the past all of their race were exterminated in a war that the humans dragged them into, and that is why they now wander to find a place to call home, since without it they cannot repopulate their race again with an angel, adding that they will be excellent workers because they have many talents that would be useful on his farm. So Lu also advises him to allow them to reveal their ages, where each one is at least more than 300 years old. And so, surprised as he is, agrees to accommodate them, saying that we'll have to get along well with the rest of the roommates, so they free up more space in the forest, where they build a much more comfortable house, so that all of them will be full of comforts. And so to show their appreciation to Proto, the girls plan to tinker with mining and blacksmithing work to build a furnace and show off their metal work to make a beautiful pan, and get very excited about their level of civilization to increase, praising that elves can do everything, hearing from them that not everything, because now all that is left is for them to re-establish themselves and reproduce. Then when at last the cooking is complete, he will be impressed with the quality of the bread, thinking that you should expand the wheat field because of this. First asking Lucia if the land they are on belongs to anyone, and that land they are on belongs to someone, and she responds by saying that she thinks nobody owns that particular piece of land. But she says that probably that area is under the demon lord's control, letting him turn with a little bit because he He expects the demon lord to be systematic about with his farmland, but she assures him that he should. Assures him that he shouldn't worry. Because he built it all without support from the demon king, so all that land belongs to him. So later the girls show up. Girls appear arguing about Hiraku because his lack of knowledge about their world. But still agreeing that he is special to them. While in his room he thinks that tomorrow will be a new day full of work for his house in his new life with his family, so he comments that he will say that you are going to watch the anime after this summary, and after it your heart also leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time. Bye.